I hear you, but I'm telling you, this is the land of my people. Minnesota was promised to us 3,000 years ago. My ancestors have been here for generations. In fact, hold on, I'll show you a picture. So this right here is a picture of my great-great-great-grandfather, Farah Ismail Abdullahi Jibril Agmadige, having tea with the Native American chief of the Dakota tribe right next to Lake Minnetonka. And this is right here. This is him fighting alongside the natives in 1816. In fact, the name Minnesota is Somali. Minan means home. Soda means there she is. Minnesota, home, there she is. That's what it means to us. Just look at the state flag of Minnesota, right? And how much it looks like the flag of Somalia. It's there to remind us of the pilgrimage our great grandparents made to make it to the promised land of Minnesota, from the sea to the lakes. Hey.
Greetings everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. And before I continue, kindly don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and share button, as this will go a long way in supporting my channel. Well, in today's episode, we are seeing that Somalis are claiming that Minnesota is a land that was promised to them 3,000 years ago. Well, Americans have not taken it lightly, and I will kindly request that you watch the rest of this video as I come with my commentaries at the end of it.
Now, in any normal country, this would cause a major backlash from the native population. But liberals actually want this. This is the greatest form of social justice. And anyone else who dares to speak out against programs getting robbed that are meant to feed hungry children are silenced and called bigots and racist and intolerant. And when you understand the entire game plan, it starts to make sense. Did you guys know that 25% of Somalia's GDP comes from remittance, money being sent from the United States to Somalia? So the strategy is to steal money from the American taxpayer, give Somali residents free housing, free food, free school, free healthcare. Give them such a comfortable lifestyle that they can afford to have 4 or 5 children, while the native-born population struggles to have 1, 2 if they're lucky. And then as their population outgrows the native population, they have more political power. And then they can enact legislation that exclusively benefits Somali people. And the money that's not exclusively for them, they can just steal it through fraud. And the more money they get, the more they send back to Somalia, because that is their goal. You heard the guy say it at the Ilhan Omar rally. But speaking of Ilhan Omar, someone who openly hates America and declares her allegiance for a foreign country, here she is going to a church and berating a bunch of white people for liking Charlie Kirk, a man who stood up for America instead of Somalia.
I do believe those of you who are interested in rewriting this hateful man's history are full of shit.
Thank you.
It is despicable that church would allow her to do that. And what's up with white liberals loving foreigners, telling them how evil they are for caring about their country? Ilhan Omar knows that their plan has succeeded. They have successfully beat the residents of Minnesota into ideological submission. Minnesotans, I guess, have just adopted the belief that their sole purpose in life is to serve the interests of Somalia. And Charlie Kirk, a man who stood up for America and American values, has to be characterized as an evil, awful person, and that's why Ilhan Omar goes on CNN, mocks Charlie Kirk's death, and says he belongs in the dustbin of history. Watch.
What I find jarring is that there are so many people willing to excuse the most reprehensible things that he said, that they agree with that they're willing to have monuments for him, that they want to create a day to honor him, and that they want to produce resolutions in the House of Congress honoring his life and legacy. It is one thing to care about his life, because obviously so many people loved him, including his children and wife. But I am not going to sit here and be judged for not wanting to honor any legacy this man has left behind. That should be in the dustbin of history, and we should hopefully move on and forget the hate that he spewed every single day.
Ilhan Omar believes that she embodies true American values, which are socialism, a deep hatred of Western civilization, a scalding contempt for white people and Christianity, an acquiescence and obeisance to the people of the third world. And because Charlie Kirk got people to understand that maybe it isn't such a great idea to import people from the third world who openly hate our country and are trying to destroy it, he's a bad, evil, racist man who belongs in the dustbin of history. Got it. She's upset that Charlie Kirk believed the American dream was for American people, not the people of Somalia. Liberals imported millions of people into this country who hate us, who told us desiring cultural unity was racist, who told us expecting people to assimilate into our culture was white supremacist bigotry. And now these people have amassed political power in cities throughout America. Here's the bonus clip I promised you guys. A Muslim man in Dearborn, Michigan, a city, by the way, that put Arabic on the official police department badges, openly admits that their goal is an Islamic takeover of America and instituting Sharia law. Watch this.
We haven't done anywhere near enough. And the people here, I promise you, we do feel ashamed. We do feel like we're not doing enough. We do feel like change needs to come, because change must come. And in the form that it must come is that this empire, the American empire that's been hurting our people since the beginning, the imperial Western powers that have been hurting our people since the beginning, they must fall. And inshallah they will fall. And my message to the people of Gaza and the oppressed peoples across the world.
To all the Somalians who are posting video claiming that Minnesota was promised to you 3,000 years ago, that would put you back 1000 BC. You guys have an entire synopsis of where the word Minnesota derived from. How about you explain to the American people how you were promised Minnesota that never existed then to your people? Because 3,000 years ago puts you 1,000 before Christ. Given that y'all got free education, free housing, free food, free internet, may you explain to the rest of the world how you were promised Minnesota when there was no Minnesota then. Hell, Christopher Columbus didn't even find America yet. So how are you promised Minnesota 3,000 years ago? It's a legit question. Can you? I'm waiting.
Hello, beautiful Somalians. I'm beginning to actually notice few of you guys on my comment sections talking about how this land is yours, especially Minnesota. My major question for you guys, if you say that this land is for you guys 3,000 years ago, you never existed at that very point in time in the United States. Never did. You see, Somalians are beginning to actually exist in the United States in 1920, and they came as sailors. Then in 1960, students are beginning to come into the land for education. And now I do not understand when you guys are beginning to claim rubbish that 3,000 years, or some are saying 5,000 years ago, this land has been given to us. Somalians, especially Minnesota. Minnesota never existed at that very point in time. So how is it even possible for that to be promised or given to you guys? You lie so much about everything. You're trying to claim a land that was never yours. Instead of you guys to assimilate in the land, you want to force your own beliefs and force it in the people of the United States. And when they say you guys to move out, you guys say, oh no, this is our land, we're gonna say we're not going anywhere. You guys have all it takes in the United States. You have free care, you have free health care, you have free housing, you have free food, you have free internet, free. I'm 100% sure that 90% of you live here freely and still getting health care, taking wealthy money from the country, and so you do not respect the land. That's where I have a problem with you guys. You do not respect the land. And now you're beginning to claim that, oh, America, the Somalians that Minnesota have been given to you guys 3,000 years ago. Are you kidding? Is this a joke? What is it with the bag of lies? You guys should, even Google can't confirm your lies. Because you never existed at that very point in time in the radar of the United States. I just think you guys should grow up and stop fooling yourselves.
Yo, Minnesota was promised to us Somalis 3,000 years ago. And if you disagree, you're an anti-Kushite bigot and you need help immediately. Also, if you read Genesis 12:3, it says that those who bless Somalis will be blessed, and those who try to harm them will bring harm upon themselves. I didn't say that. Genesis 12:3. Just saying.
The state of Minnesota is the home of the Somali people, in which it fulfills its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination.
A lot of white nationalists are really upset about Somali immigration to Minnesota for some reason. But the thing is, Minnesota is the homeland of the Somali people, and it was promised to us 3,000 years ago. In fact, one of the founding documents of the state of Minnesota is literally codifying into law that Somali people have self-determination on that land. As it states very plainly in the basic law in Minnesota, the land of Minnesota is the historical homeland of the Somali people, in which the state of Minnesota was established. The state of Minnesota is the home of the Somali people, in which it fulfills its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. The right to exercise self-determination in the state of Minnesota is unique to the Somali people. The state views the development of Somali settlement as a national value and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. So that's the end of the debate. The only people who have the right to self-determination in Minnesota are Somalis. Somalis have a cultural tie to the land. It was promised to us 3,000 years ago, and we have the right to go back to our homeland. If anybody wants to help me pay for Aliyah to my homeland, please help me out.
The name Minnesota actually stems from two Somali words. One being Minan, which comes from the southern dialect of Somalia, which means home. And the second is Sota, which is like, Sota, there she is. Home, there she is, Minnesota. So technically, we actually are the native.
A $250 million fraud scheme. Already 77 people, many of them Somali immigrants, have been charged in one of the largest taxpayer-funded scams in U.S. history. Minnesota, home to the largest Somali community in America, has become the center of this massive investigation. This is the Feeding Our Future scandal, a pandemic-era scheme in which defendants allegedly stole over $250 million meant to provide meals for low-income children. Instead of feeding kids, prosecutors say the money went toward luxury homes, high-end cars, jewelry, overseas transfers, and an entire network of shell companies. According to the DOJ, the conspirators submitted fake invoices, fabricated meal counts, and even staged photos to make it look like they were serving millions of meals that never existed. In some cases, they claimed to feed more children than lived in entire neighborhoods. A federal jury found Amy Bach, the founder of Feeding Our Future, and Salim Ahmed Saeed guilty of conspiracy, bribery, wire fraud, money laundering. Federal officials say more arrests may still be coming.
Hi, it's me again. I just found out something today. I found out that Minnesota was promised to the Somalis 3,000 years ago. Says in Genesis. Now, I've read the whole Bible and I don't ever remember saying anything about Minnesota. I mean, I don't think anyone knew anything about Minnesota until the Europeans came to this continent. The other thing I found out was that Houston and Atlanta is the promised land of the Nigerians. It was also promised to them in Genesis. So, it seems that any group that the Trumpster seems to want to evict, they're claiming that they are supposed to be where they're at. That's funny. Parts of this country used to belong to Mexico, but I don't ever hear Mexicans say that they belong here, that it was promised to them. And should the Africans that was brought here as slaves, was the South their promised land? Should they claim the South? Hey, I'm just asking.
Minnesota was promised to the Somalis 3,000 years ago, and I got proof. In this video alone, I'm going to show you the evidence as to why Minnesota is their native land. So as we should all know by now, some of the first early settlers of Minnesota were actually Somali explorers. They came to Minnesota and actually set up one of the first early civilizations. And as you can see here, this is a picture of the Somali founding fathers of Minnesota. Even this guy here, he's still Somali, he's just half Yemeni. And as well, we can quite clearly see the Somali flag waving in the background. And as you can see from the old Minnesota flag, it is very, very similar to the Somali flag. They got similar color schemes, they just covered the star up. But in the year 2024, they actually changed the Minnesota flag to resemble more of a Somali flag. Reason being, they were scared of losing the history and the culture of Minnesota. And the new flag was actually designed by a non-Somali called Andrew Pekuri. However, that being said, this man most likely does have Somali ancestry. Because as we know, some of the most famous Minnesotans ever actually do seem to have a mix of Somali admixture within their DNA, which actually isn't too far-fetched considering the fact that they've been here for so long and that it was promised to them 3,000 years ago. And if you disagree, then you're anti-Cushitic.
The left is finally broken, y'all. The reaction from them to this whole Somali immigration criticism shows a clear pattern. The moment the topic surfaces, activists rush to the same lines. Y'all like the video right here, follow for more. And let's get into it. So the newest claim is that Somali immigrants built this country. Oh my God, these people have lost their minds. Viewers hear this from politicians and activists who frame any objection to illegal entry or fraud investigations as a racial hostility instead of a policy dispute. A viral example shows a progressive commentator saying that America was built by Somali, Indian, Latino, and African immigrants. The argument tries to replace the historic record of early American institutions with modern political narrative. The ideas that created the country were shaped by European settlers who developed the legal framework, property rights, common law, and civic model that still define the U.S. today. That foundation is not erased by recent migration waves or by political slogans. The story grows louder when Ilhan Omar repeats this idea and insists that Somali communities have always been the fabric of this nation. That claim conflicts with documented immigration history. Somali migration to the U.S. is recent and represents a small share of the population. The claim that Somali immigrants were central to the founding of the country is not true. The political purpose of these statements is clear, though. Activists use them to frame critics as morally wrong for discussing fraud cases or immigration enforcement. Instead of addressing the investigations or policy failures, the argument becomes emotional pressure. The claim suggests that asking questions is a personal attack rather than a civic concern. This tactic is meant to silence debate. The discussion is not about denying anyone's dignity. It's about correcting false historical claims and refusing to let slogans rewrite American history or block valid scrutiny of public policy. Y'all like the video right there? Follow for more. Let me know what you think down there in the comments. I'll catch you on the next one.
Somalis just took over Minneapolis. Technically, it's like they're taking over all of Minnesota. Specifically, Minneapolis has been in the line of sight for a lot of people in the past couple of weeks because of everything that has gone on there. And I want to just bring this to your attention in case you were not aware yet. So Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, which is a weird name to me, made a video, which I'm not going to make you listen to because it's not really worth listening to liberals talk. But it says, let us be very clear, there are no roving Somali gangs terrorizing people. And then I would like to bring you, just so you guys can see, this roving Somali gang that is terrorizing people. This is not Minneapolis, though. Let me be 100% like upfront with y'all, because a lot of people are calling this Minneapolis. That is not Minneapolis. But you see that sign, Andy's Grill. You can see what's happening there. But this is not Minneapolis. Where this is happens to be, let's make sure I get this right. This is on in Falcon Heights in Minnesota, Falcon Heights. And if you look at their map, it tells you temporarily closed. Now, we could, make it seem all, oh my gosh, they've had to temporarily close because of the Somalis, but technically they closed for good in August, I believe, of 2024. They said that this Andy's Grill was in business for 17 years and the people were retiring. But you have to wonder, did it have anything to do with the roving Somali gangs? Because this is not the first video that we have seen. It will not be the last video that we see of these people that are just out there like a pack of wild dogs. Literally, they were flipping the benches. They are hitting each other, flipping benches, all kinds of stuff. And it's like, do you not have anything better to do than terrorize the people of Minnesota in general, no matter what county or city you happen to be in? Absolutely crazy. But what's even worse is that you have the attorney there, the Hennepin County attorney, going, no, it's not real. There's no such thing. Do they not understand that the internet exists and we can just go type in, hey, show me videos of Somalis terrorizing Minnesota, and a plethora of shit pops up, whether you want to look at it on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever the crap else is out there? There are plenty of videos to completely put this woman in her place and make her shut her mouth, because clearly she is incorrect. What's even crazier though, Tim Walz, I mean, that's that. But what's even crazier is this post from Ilhan Omar. Y'all, I am a nice person, generally speaking. I am a very nice person, but there are some people that I'm like, oh, you got a real punchable face. Ilhan Omar happens to be one of those, unfortunately for her. It's that shit-eating grin that she has when she talks. I don't do well with it personally. She posted a video of President Trump on her X account. Okay, this is.
Well, if you've watched to this end, thank you once again, and let's get down to it. For starters, we need to understand what is causing the current conflict between the Somali community and the United States. Well, this is a rather sensitive issue that was brought about when the United States federal government caught up with Somali individuals who were carrying out fraud in the state of Minnesota, and this fraud mainly targeted the retirement homes and other vulnerable people in the community. And in doing so, we're getting to see that in harsh retaliation, Trump launched a immediate campaign to deport all the illegal Somalis who were present in the country. And in doing so, he also terminated the TPS policy that protected individuals who came from countries that were war-torn to seek asylum in the United States. And again, in doing that, amid other deportation policies that have been recently carried out by Donald Trump, we're getting to see that the Somali community is the current receiver of this harsh treatment from Trump's government. And in retaliation, we are seeing that the Somalis are not sitting back. They are trying to fight back at the United States federal government, as they believe that it is their birthright to live in the Minnesota state and in the United States as general. And in doing this again, we've seen various exchanges on numerous social media platforms with Somalis coming out in numbers to try and support each other. And in doing so, you're getting to see again the liberals in the United States are also coming out to support the Somalians. And the reason behind it, well, we can all know it. And in doing so, we are seeing that even other Somali leaders are coming out publicly to claim that Minnesota is their ancestral promised land, and that is currently their city. And how did this begin? Well, going back to history, you understand that Somalis first started coming into the United States as asylum seekers back in the 1990s. And this is after their country was hit by war and famine, and in doing so, these Somalis were accepted into the United States as immigrants, and they were settled in Minnesota, in which you get to see through the years they have managed to become successful and increase their numbers in the state to a point that it is believed the state is currently dominated by the Somalis. And in another feat of mockery, we're getting to see that amid Trump's latest deportation threats, actually it's not threats because he has actively begun deporting Somalis back to their country, and we have seen several clips of Somalians being deported back to their country by the ICE agent who are currently setting camp in Minnesota to flush out all the illegal immigrants and even the legal ones, if possible, as you all know how Trump operates when it comes to deporting individuals who he views as being a threat to the American people or to the well-being of everyone in the country. He never hesitates to flush them out of the country. And again, you should understand that recently we get to see that Trump also banned some countries from ever bringing in immigrants into the United States, I mean. And again, you're noticing that he has also permanently banned the arrival of immigrants into the country. So whatever is happening right now between the Somalis and the Trump government is something that is about to get dark and real fast. So going back to the Somalis, in the recent feat and claims, we see some Somalis audaciously claiming that the Minnesota land was promised to their ancestors 3,000 years ago. And these bold Somalis have gone ahead to also quote some Bible verses claiming that there is scriptural evidence that Minnesota, was promised to them. And this, going back to reality and after doing some research, this is all a lie. It's a myth. Let's call it a modern myth, as there is no land called Minnesota that was promised to the Somali people. Going back to history and understanding the origin of the Somali people, the Somali come from the Horn of Africa, and they are predominantly found in countries such as Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and in the some northern parts of Kenya. So there is no historical or archaeological evidence that suggests or that shows that Somalians once occupied Minnesota. The original occupants of the states of Minnesota have nothing remotely related to the Somali people. And this claim by Somalis that the state of Minnesota was promised to them is a form of the modern day rage baiting, whereby they are trying to make Americans feel bad for themselves. And if you have seen the clips in this film, you notice that most of these Somalis making this claim don't have concrete facts or claims to support their audacious claims that the state of Minnesota was promised to them. To make it worse, there is also no religious text in the Quran or in the Bible that suggests any land being promised to the Somalians. And in doing so, they are just trying to find out a way to rage bait the Americans and get that attention, in which to some people is being used in a humorous way, but to some people it is being taken seriously and could be used as a way of inciting people into getting angry and putting pressure on the government to actually deport these Somalians who they are viewing as a threat to not only the Minnesota but also the entire American states. And the Somalis are becoming audacious, and you can see from the politicians who represent the Somali community, most of them have come out to audaciously make claims that are quite inciting. But there is also another faction of their leaders who are trying to be sensible and logical and are trying to find practical ways of solving the current issue of crime and fraud within the Somali community, therefore ensuring that everyone living within the community is living peacefully and having their own way of life without necessarily affecting the life of other people or becoming a threat or an impasse to the well-being of other Americans. Well, this marks the end of this episode. Kindly don't forget to share your thoughts and ideas with me in the comment section. Thank you once again, and see you in the next one.